Right, hello everyone, Patizo here. Welcome to another soul activation session. I've got Nolwazi behind the camera who's going to be asking me a couple of questions there, and I'll try and answer them the best I can. So today I just felt like, we need to address the parent to child kind of like issues or challenges. And yeah, we'll take it from there.
All right. So the first topic that we're going to look at is the generational differences in emotional expression. So how do you feel that society basically around emotional expression in your upbringing differ from those today?
I think in the past, in the past 3 or 4 generations, our parents were not allowed to voice out any negative emotion. Mm-hmm. So, if you look at how we grew up, and if you look at the religious kind of like setup as well, it was not allowing us to express something different. Mm-hmm. And once you start expressing your honest feelings, you are called disrespectful. So what that has done is that it has made our parents sort of like bottle up a lot of emotions. It has made them transfer the emotions to us, because I believe that whoever you are angry at, you become. So if our grandfathers were angry at their fathers, and it's just a cycle. It's just a cycle of not being able to express yourself because it's other people that are sensitive or they get offended easily. So everyone sort of like doesn't want to go and address the uncomfortable conversations. Whereas with us now, this generation is we're starting to express how we feel. We're starting to be in touch with our feelings. We're starting to be aware. And I feel that there's a breach, or there's a gap now, because we want to express how we feel to a generation that has never ever sort of like been in that space. So I think that's where the challenge is now, yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, in what ways do you think you were taught explicitly or implicitly to handle emotions like sadness, anger, frustration, vulnerability?
I think with the lack of father figures, a lot of us become very masculine. So you become sort of like very defensive, and you become tough, as they call it. So it's a challenge, because then you are not in touch. Remember, God made all the feelings. He made the anger, He made jealousy, He made all these feelings, So we have to feel the feelings. But as I said, what has happened is that now we are told that we're only supposed to feel happy and, supposed to feel blessed, and those you can express, but you can't express the opposite, which is the challenge that we're facing, But I think with the current generation now, and with our kids, it's going to start getting a bit better, because we're starting to express, and we're starting to allow our kids to be sort of like expressive in how they feel. And if we now start operating the feminine, especially the male figures, if we start operating the feminine, it's going to get much more better, because then we can express vulnerability. Look, vulnerability is God, eh? Vulnerability is being in God. It's where you grow. It's only when you grow when you're vulnerable. You can't grow when you're tough, unfortunately. Toughness has got a lot to do with your ego and your pride. Vulnerability has got a lot to do with compassion and understanding that, we as humans are a mess, and it's okay for us to be a mess.
Okay. So with that being said, why do you think that like defensiveness from the older generation is like a common emotion that we get when we bring up their perceived faults or things that we think they could improve on?
I think, look, defensiveness comes from a place of fear, nah? You've sort of like been so criticized a lot, or you've been rejected a lot when you're young, that the only place that you feel safe in is to sort of like be defensive, or to block people and to block emotions from coming through. So I think that the past generation was just entertained on their pain and how they feel about the rejection from their spouses or their fathers or their mothers, or whatever the case may be, because I think they've got a lot of issues that they've been dealt with. And you can see with us now that when we're trying to sort of like measure and we're trying to get closer to them, they always like be defensive, because they feel they're being attacked, whereas we're trying to communicate.
Okay, so then with that being said, how do we approach the conversations in with sensitivity but still find a way to address the emotional or have emotional redress?
I don't think we can. I don't think we can address it with sensitivity, because it's an uncomfortable conversation. You can't have an uncomfortable conversation when you try with sensitivity. It's just as to be raw as it is. You must just pray that that person is mature enough to handle it on the other side.
Can we not practice sensitivity by giving grace?
In order for you to give grace, you need to understand, right?
Yeah.
I think part of forgiveness and part of healing is to understand. Now, understanding doesn't necessarily mean that the other party is going to be sort of like apologetic for what they're doing. So the challenge that we're facing is that we want people to apologize for what they've done. And the question becomes, what if they're not aware that whatever they've done needs an apology? So what that means is that now you're hampering your progress of forgiving someone because you're expecting them to apologize. the power in maturity or emotional maturity is to be able to forgive a human being by understanding where they come from without them apologizing for it, which is still okay. Because if you don't forgive them, they're actually hating you twice, if you think about it.
Yeah.
They've got a hold over you, if you think
True.
about it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think, honestly, you can't address these issues without any sensitivity. You have to address it as long as you can and hope that other human beings mature enough to handle it, or you can maybe get a third party involved.
All right. So, what do you think needs to change in family dynamics to create a healthy environment for us to express emotions for the generations to come, not just necessarily us, for the next ones to come? What do we need to change?
I think we need to be knowledgeable. We need to be knowledgeable in this regard. Healthy families are the families that are expressing how they feel, and they can fight and do whatever, and then it's done. The topic is done. I think dysfunctional families are the families that always hide their things and they put them under the carpet, and it looks like they're healthy and everyone is getting along, but actually they've got a lot of baggage that they've been addressed. So I think we must come to a situation whereby we're creating healthy, sort of like places, safe spaces for us to communicate how we feel about each other, and for the other human being to handle it. Because at the end of the day, what makes you think that because someone is your mom or your dad or your sister or your brother, then they have to, or your spouse, then they have to get along with you?
True.
Think about it.
Yeah.
It's a title. There's a human being there that's got their own flaws, that's different from you. So if you can have a conflict with someone from the street, what makes you think that you're not allowed to have a conflict with your sister or brother?
True.
What makes you think that you can't be different? What makes you think that you can't have indifferences? It is how we handle the indifferences and how we handle the conflict that matters. But the conflict and the indifferences are always going to be there. But we've put the title in front and said, this is my mom or this is my dad. They can't hurt me. Yes, they can hurt you because they're also human beings. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just saying that narrative of thinking that just because someone is close to you, they can't be different or they can't hurt you. They will hurt you. They'll disappoint you, and it's okay.
Okay. So as Keith Patizwe Mabuza, how do you see yourself contributing to this change, and what would you like your legacy to be in terms of emotional well-being in your family?
So in my family, I want to create a safe space for my kids, for them to express how they feel. In my family, I want to be emotionally aware that, when my kids bring up certain topics about how they feel about me, I'm not going to get offensive. I want to create a place where they can be able to express themselves, either negative or positive or whatever the situation might be. I want to create a safe space for my kids. And with let's say the older generation in my family, I want to create an awareness of all these things that we're discussing, so that everyone is aware that they have to go and self-reflect and to be aware of what they struggle with in the past. Because families have got their own diseases. Right? Every family's got their own things that they struggle with. Some families struggle with favoritism that has been there forever and is still continuing even today in the 5th, 6th generation. Some families struggle with addictions. Some families struggle with a lot of things like low self-esteem issues, bodies and all. So there's a lot of dynamics that are surrounding families. So families, you start sort of like entertaining those and having those uncomfortable conversations so that we can find solutions to these things. Yeah.
Okay. So what advice would you give to a parent who's on the journey like yourself, trying to change? Like, what advice would you give to a parent who's just entered the journey of trying to change the whole narrative and discourse around emotional expression?
I think, first of all, don't judge yourself for what has happened in the past. That's the first thing. Have compassion for yourself as well. Secondly, don't expect that now that you're on a journey, everyone is going to be on that journey, because this is your journey and God's journey. Whatever time it arrives, it's going to arrive. 62 years old. I know someone that's 62, only God came in and their lives with 62 to tell them that they were toxic, and they started to change. So whenever God comes into a human being, it is not our time, unfortunately. So that you're on your journey, don't force everyone else to be on the journey that you're in. But be aware and practice it yourself, and you'll see it's a beautiful place to be in. And the nice thing about being aware is that you don't have to do anything about it. Meaning that just as you're aware, it's good enough. You don't have to do anything about it. You don't have to take steps. You don't have to do anything about it. Everything will fall into place as long as you're aware.
Okay, any words of wisdom as we're about to wrap this up?
I want to say something positive. I've got a lot of friends that are surrounding me currently, and male friends. And what I want to say is that the male perspective is shifting, because these guys that are surrounding me and a couple of guys that I know are very responsible fathers. It has never happened before. So now we're finding that more and more men are becoming more responsible to their kids. And I think it's a beautiful thing to see. But I also want to say to the guys, remember, the sacrifices that we do now are not for now. So the punches that we're getting in now are not for now. They're for the future of our kids. So whatever we're planting now, they might only reap it in the next 2 generations as well. So whatever I'm doing now with my parenting, I'm setting it up for my kids. You know, it's got nothing to do with me at present. It's got for me to set it up, because remember, I think 60-70% of us grew up with broken families. So why do you continue with that legacy? So we must try and create a new legacy. And yeah, the guys are doing very well in that regard. And if you are a male and you're still not involved in your kid's life, I'll encourage you to start getting involved in it, because yeah, it's a beautiful place to be in.
Okay.
Coolio.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.